for the coordinated approach to the transportation safety, which has created a scenario where each of the regulatory agencies in the transportation sector handles their safety issues and independent of each other. This bill by the Limuru Member of Parliament, John Kiragu, which is in its first reading, also seeks to provide a mechanism for safeguarding transportation safety and investigation transportation accidents and making appropriate recommendations to forestall the future occurrences of such kind of accidents. The bill also seeks to make consequential amendments, that is, to the Kenya Maritime Authority, the Merchant Shipping Act and the Civil Aviation Act to confer the powers of investigating maritime and aviation accidents and accidents upon proposed National Transportation and Safety Authority. And the Speaker of today's proceedings has walked into today's session, and I hand over you to the plenary. Let's listen in.
Mheshimiwa wabunge, na tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wake wa binadamu, tuwakusihi tutazame kwa neema nyingi hizi watumishi wako ambao wameridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri hii yetu. Tuwakuomba tuteremshie baraka zako sisi leo kutanika hapa, na tujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe, na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi hii yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amina.
To the National Transport and Safety Authority, that is, to have an integrated and unified approach towards regulation of safety of various modes of transportation. This bill also, in its first reading, provides for transition and savings provisions that is occasioned by the consequentials amendment. The bill does not delegate legislative powers. This means also it does not limit fundamental rights and freedoms. The National Transport and Safety Authority Amendment Bill number 24 of 2024 concerns the county governments. That is in terms of Article 110(1)(a) of the 2010 Constitution. And this bill is not a money bill, that is within the meaning of Article 114 of the Constitution. We also have the Public Service Internship Bill, the Bill number 22, that is brought by the Member of Parliament for Samburu West constituency, that is Honorable Naisula Lesuda. This is a bill on its second reading. There is a resumption of the debate that was interrupted on Wednesday, June 12 on 2024. It has a balance of 33 minutes, and the bill is expected to be debated this morning. This bill, on its second reading, seeks to establish the legal framework for the regulations of internship programs within the public service. Article 55 of the Constitution provides that the state shall take measures, including affirmative action programs, to ensure that the youth have access to inter alia relevant education, training, and employment. This bill, the Public Service Internship Bill, number 63 of 2022, seeks to ensure provisions of a monthly stipend, insurance, and other entitlements to persons engaged in internships within the public service for the duration of the internship program. The provisions of the stipend to interns is necessarily as interns contribute to the manpower of the organization by offering their professional skills to the public service. The bill provides for preliminary provisions, which include the short title and interpretation of terms as used in the bill. This bill delegates legislative powers to the Cabinet Secretary, but it does not limit fundamental rights and freedoms. On whether this bill will concern the county government in terms of Article 109(5) of the Constitution, it does, as it contains provisions that affect the functions and powers of the county governments as set out in the fourth schedule to the Constitution. Therefore, it provides for the recruitment of interns in both the national and the county governments. The enactment of this bill may occasion additional expenditure of public funds. That is on statement to whether the bill is a money bill within the meaning of Article 114 of the 2010 Constitution. The members will begin with a procedural motion, that is exemption of specified business from the Standing Order 43 as it appears today in today's order paper, today being Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by the majority or the minority party, or business sponsored by a committee of this House. It shall be remembered that this is the second day after members of Parliament resumed to the House after a 1-month recess. Today, the members are also expected to consider a motion on the first supplementary estimates for the financial year 2024 or 2025. This being the general debate brought by the chairpersons of Budget and Appropriations Committee, who is also the Member of Parliament for Kiharu constituency, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro. And also a motion on the policy for the provision of mental health services in all healthcare facilities. Our Constitution, Article 43(1)(a), provides that every person has a right to the highest attainable standard of health, including the right to healthcare services. Mental health is a key determinant of overall health and socio-economical development. And while recognizing that the Constitution assigns to the national government the responsibility of matters of health policy, it's a concern that according to the World Health Organization's, mental health disorders are common, and about 10% of the global population suffer from at least one mental health disorder at any given time. It's a concern that there are only few units available in a facility in the country, and patients requiring such services are limited or have no access completely to these facilities. And while acknowledging that access to healthcare facilities would lead to improved overall health, increased economic productivity, social equity, and improved quality of life for all, the House urges the national government, that is through the Ministry of Health, to collaborate with the county governments to develop a policy that integrates mental health care services in all the healthcare facilities in the country. That is in the 290 constituencies and 47 county governments. That is the motion 19 of 2023 brought by Honorable Mishi Mboko. That is the motion on the policy for the provision of mental health services in all healthcare facilities in the country. The members are also this morning expected to debate on the motion on the policy and funding for sugarcane farming in the country. That is the motion number 24 of 2023, brought by the Honorable Member Peter Nabulindo. Commercial sugarcane production in our country was introduced in the early years of independence. That is with an aim of eliminating dependence on sugar importations and contributing to the economic transformation in the sugar belt and country at large. That is through agriculture. The sugar industry significantly contributes to the country's national gross domestic product, GDP, and became one of the largest employers, which supported livelihoods for so many Kenyans, both directly or indirectly. It's a concern that over the last 25 years, the sugarcane farming, and particularly in the western region of Kenya, has been declining, dipping sugar production from over 600,000 metric tons per year in the 1990s to less than 300,000 metric tons in the recent years. And after the Speaker has added 5 minutes to the bell to be rung to allow members of Parliament to walk to this session. The session that are expected to begin at 9:30, today being Wednesday, for the morning sitting. And still on the policy and funding for the sugarcane farming in the country, that is the motion by the Honorable Peter Nabulindo on motion number 24 of 2023. The commercial sugarcane production in Kenya, which was just introduced in the early years of independence with the aim of eliminating the dependence on sugar importation, which was contributing to the economic transformation in the sugar belt and the country at large through the agriculture. It's noted that over the last 25 years, sugarcane farming, particularly in Western Kenya, has been declining significantly. The dipping sugar production from over 600,000 metric tons per year in the 1990s to less than 300,000 metric tons in the recent years. The decline in the sugar farming has forced, that is, the local millers to operate far below their milling capacities and pushed the country to rely on importation. And the decline in the sugar production is attributable to factors such as the mismanagement, interference, and unfair competition from the cheap imported sugar. It's a concern that the state-owned sugar millers like the Mumias Sugar Company, the Nzoia Sugar Company, ceased milling while owing farmers hundreds of millions of shillings. And while appreciating that the government has been putting in place strategies, policies, and regulations to define roles of millers and major players in the stakeholders in the sugar industry, that is in a bid to revamp the sector, it's a concern that the acute shortage of sugarcane resulting from the mass abandonment of sugarcane farming continues to roll back initiatives for reviving sugar milling. Investments in revamping sugar companies before reviving sugarcane farming would occasion on a loss of the invested public funds instead of yielding success. And the House resolves that the national government, that is through the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Developments, to review the sugar development policies in order to provide that every investor sets aside definite funds for development of sugarcane farming. That is to help farmers to embrace sugarcane growing, and that is to enhance the cane production in each of the respective zones. That is motion number 24 of 2023, brought by Honorable Peter Nabulindo on the policy and funding for the sugarcane farming in the country. We also have a motion on the national sensitization and support for the combating sickle cell diseases in the country. That is by the same Member of Parliament, the Honorable Peter Nabulindo. That is the motion number 26 of 2023. And I hand over you to the...
Order, members, order.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of the Majority Leader, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, July 24, 2024. This is a morning sitting. 1, annual report and financial statements for the financial year 2022-2023 for the Office of the Controller of Budget. 2, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements of the National Government's Constituencies Development Fund, NGCDF, for the year ended 30th June 2023, and the certificates therein in respect of the following constituencies. Number 1, Kitui East. Number 2, Kitui Central. Number 3, Kitui Rural. Number 4, Webuye East. Number 5, Webuye West. Number 6, Samburu West. Number 7, Samburu North. Number 8, Marakwet West. Number 9, Keyo South. Number 10, Narok West. Number 11, Kajiado Central. Number 12, Baringo Central. Number 13, Baringo South. And 14, Mokotio. And finally, Matungulu. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Mishi Mboko, is she in?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, 24th July 2024, the annual report of the Parliamentary Service Commission for the financial year 2022-2023. I submit. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well, noted.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
With questions and statements, we got the member for TRT, Honorable William Kamket. Matek.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 42G, I would like to ask the Teacher Service Commission the following. Number one, could the Commission provide the current recruitment status of principals and deputy principals in arid and semi-arid areas who have served for over 10 years without formal employment letters? Number two, what measures is the Commission putting in place to streamline the appointment process of school administrators in arid and semi-arid regions, ensuring transparency, fairness, and adherence to established procedures? Number three, could the Commission provide a timeline for when these teachers will receive their confirmation letters and have their arrears paid for the period they have served as principals and deputy principals since their deployment? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Gonzirai. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh. The question by the Honorable Gonzirai, just take your seat for a moment.
Okay.
The question by the member for Tiati will go to the Department Committee for Education. I know that Honorable Mameli is here. Okay, the Honorable Malulu.
Chairman, we'll invite the PS in next week. Then I believe after that we'll make a report to the House. Thank you.
This question is directed to the Commission, not to the PS.
Sorry, yes. The CEO, Nancy Macharia, next week.
Okay. Honorable Makali. This question.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I just wanted to say this, Honorable Speaker, in relation to that question which Honorable Kamketas forwarded to the Departmental Committee on Education, that matter is a matter which is cutting across, actually, not even semi-arid. It's a national problem. And I really wish that the Departmental Committee on Education takes it urgently with the TSC. It is a matter which is affecting a lot of teachers. It has demoralized a lot of our teachers. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Gonzirai.
Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order number 44, into brackets 2, into bracket C, I rise to request for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Blue Economy, Water and Irrigation regarding the status on implementation of Mwache Dam project. Honorable Speaker, Mwache Dam Development Project, which is located on the Mwache River in Kwale County, is a crucial development envisioned to benefit millions of Kenyans in the coastal region and boost agricultural activity in the surrounding areas. Despite its importance, the implementation of project has been ordinarily delayed. His Excellency the President recently inaugurated the construction, marking the beginning of its long-awaited implementation on 2023. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Blue Economy, Water and Irrigation on the following. 1. What is the status implementation of the Mwache Dam project, including progress reports and any challenge encountered by the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation? 2. Could the Minister clarify whether the settlement action plan was implemented to ensure the relocation of people affected by the Mwache Dam project and outline the provisions provided to the people for restoration of their livelihoods. 3, explain why schools located in close proximity to the Mwache Dam construction, where learning is disrupted by dust, noise, and other impacts due to the construction, have not been relocated to provide more conducive learning environment. 4, state the measures that the ministry has put in place to mitigate further escalation of conflicts and address grievances by the residents, which include fair wages by the construction company and community environment for the purpose of transparency during decision making. 5, explain the action that have been taken to facilitate collaboration by the national and land government in resolving the lingering land dispute and compensation issues to ensure timely completion of the project. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. This question will then be directed to the relevant committee, the Committee on Blue Economy, Water and Irrigation. And I saw the Honorable Kangogo sometime earlier. The Honorable Dorothy, are you a member of that committee?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I can see the chair is not around. I'm a member of that committee. I'll pass that information, and I want to promise in 2 weeks' time you'll be able to give a reply. Thank you, Chair. Okay. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Are you just?
Mr. Speaker, the urgency of this matter is very urgent because of the fact that the works have been stopped at the Mwache Dam as of now. So if actually we can just give some timelines to ensure at least the works can just continue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, the Honorable Dorothy, you need to get the Honorable Kangogo to inform you of the urgency of this matter. I'm sure the Honorable Genz can also be able to engage the chairperson, even as you wait for the formal engagement at the committee level. Thank you.
I stand guided. I want to assure the member it will be looked into. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Order number 8, procedural motion, exemption of specified business from the standing order 43.
The little majority.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move that this House resolves to exempt the business appearing as order number 11 in today's order paper from the provisions of standing order 40, subclause 3, being a Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by the majority or minority party or a business sponsored by a committee. Mr. Speaker, the general import of this motion is, without anticipating debate on standing order number 11, is to seek to have that order be discussed this morning because as a consequence of the rejection of the finance bill. This is supplementary budget that we need to discuss so that we can align government's expenditure to the budget, to the monies that is collected by KRA. So, Mr. Speaker, this is just to allow the House to debate the supplementary budget that will be coming in the next order in order number 11. So I am seeking that members do support this because this is purely a procedural motion, and I would like to request the Honorable Bukose to second.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. I stand to second the procedural motion to exempt the business appearing as order number 11 from our usual sitting for bills not sponsored by minority or majority party or a committee. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, members. I propose the motion that this House resolves to exempt the business appearing as order number 11 in today's order paper from the provisions of Standing Order number 40, subsection 3, being a Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by the majority or minority party or business sponsored by a committee. The Honorable Oundo.
Thank you, Speaker, for this opportunity to comment. In essence, I don't oppose the motion, but obviously, like every Kenyan will ask, what's the hurry? The bill already is running. It has already been signed, enacted, and it's operational. All that we need to do is to rationalize the budget to fit the expected revenue. We have not even concluded the presidential memorandum on the Finance Act. So I don't know where we are anticipating debate. What if Honorable Bukoso, Dr. Bukoso is able to marshal 2/3 majority to defeat the presidential memorandum? Where does it leave us in such a circumstance? So procedurally, Honorable Speaker, I would have imagined the orderly way to do things. We will have to have dealt with the presidential memorandum on the finance bill, Finance Act, or finance bill, so to speak. So we are certainly sure that the amount that was proposed, 300 and something billion, is not going to be realized. Before then, we rationalize the budget. What if we are able to defeat the presidential memorandum and then we pass the finance bill the way it is? So will you have again to do another second supplementary, which becomes very untidy? Fine, I don't sit in the House Business Committee, but if I sit there, that would have been my advice. Let's deal with the revenue side, then we finalize with the expenditure side. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
This is a very straightforward matter. I don't know why there would be so much of this. Members, I just put the question on this matter, that this House resolves to exempt the business appearing as order number 11 in today's order paper from the provisions of Standing Order 43, being a Wednesday morning, a day allocated for business not sponsored by the majority or minority party or business sponsored by a committee. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Will as many of that opinion say nay? Ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, the National Transport and Safety Authority Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 24 of 2024, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the National Transport and Safety Authority Act and for connected purposes.
Next order.
Order number 10, the Public Service Internship Bill, National Assembly Bill number 63 of 2022, second reading, resumption of debate.
Thank you. Members, the debate on this bill has been ongoing. You got a balance of 33 minutes on this to be concluded. And as of the last time it was on the order paper, the member on the floor finished their contribution. So I don't know whether what I can see on my dashboard is for people who want to contribute on this bill. I will start with Honorable Gishimu Gidinji of Gishugu.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this bill, the Public Service Internship Bill, sponsored by Honorable Naisura Lesuda. Honorable Speaker, from the onset, let me say that this is a very progressive bill that will address the issues, some of the issues that have been raised by the young people of this country, because it seeks to place them in a very good situation in terms of matters internship. And Honorable Speaker, this is a matter, though it has been happening in this country, has not been legislated. And when this bill now comes into place, Honorable Speaker, it is a bill worth being supported by every member for the interest of the young people of this country. However, Honorable Speaker, I would like to make some comments and proposals in respect of the bill that we would be discussing and probably making amendments towards the Committee of the Whole. Honorable Speaker, the Cabinet Secretary, who is indicated under the bill, is the Cabinet Secretary in charge of labor. However, I would like to consult with the sponsor of the bill to seek concurrence that we have the Cabinet Secretary who is in charge of public service, because this is a matter of public service. And going down the bill, you'll find that the institutions are in charge are the institution of the public service. Honorable Speaker, then under clause 6.1, it refers to a person in charge of the public service. I think, and in my opinion, with the concurrence of the sponsor, I'll be seeking an amendment so that we institutionalize the matter of internship than personalizing it, so that we leave it to the public service. Public service in itself is an independent commission, and once we say public service, it does not matter who will be in charge, but the public service as institution will be in charge of the internship. And that also goes to clause 6.4, whereby the public service as an institution, as a commission, an independent constitutional commission, will be required to do the recruitment. Honorable Speaker, under clause 9E, there appears to be a conflict or a misunderstanding between the supervisor and the mentor. I think we need to centralize an intern before, or to be, there should be only one person in charge of an intern, instead of having a mentor and a supervisor for ease of coordination of the activities of an intern. I think that is an area that I will also be seeking with the concurrence of the sponsor to have an amendment. Honorable Speaker, if you go to clause 10, clause 10 provides for the stipend which should be paid to the intern, and that should come by way of a regulation by the Cabinet Secretary. I think since a stipend is also very central to the issue of an intern, we should have the regulations also pegged on a specific time within which they should be made. And I will be moving an amendment to say that where a stipend has to be by a regulation by the CS, that has to be done within 6 months, so that we don't have a situation whereby an intern starts and ends the internship without the regulations being in place. Maybe 6 months from the date of assent of this act, of this bill into law. Honorable Speaker, under clause 11, it provides for a medical, a personal insurance cover. personal accident cover for an intern. I think there should be a general insurance cover, which should also cover any other medical issue and also matters of personal accidents. So I think that's an area that I will also be seeking to have an amendment during the committee of the whole. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the clause 14, clause 14 provides for grounds under which an intern can be discontinued. And Honorable Speaker, under these grounds, I think we should make it very lenient. We should not make it very strict, that if an intern does not appear at his or her place of work within 24 hours, you discontinue. I think we should make it a bit lenient so that if an intern does not appear at the place of work for a longer period, like maybe 2 weeks, without any explanation or any permission from the supervisor or the mentor, I think that can also lead to gross misconduct or kind of disobedience. I think we should limit the discontinuation only to 2 grounds, whereby it can only be through a gross or dishonorable misconduct or where an intern has already or has been found criminally liable, so that we can make it very easy for these interns to do their job. Finally, Honorable Speaker, if you look at the clause 15, which provides for the general regulations, I think we also need to peg or to put a limit of time under which the cabinet secretary who is in charge of the interns, that is, in my opinion, the cabinet secretary in charge of the public public service, it should be given a time limit of about 6 months within which the regulation should be in place so that we can be able to operationalize this act within a very reasonable time. Honorable Speaker, otherwise this bill is very progressive, and with many amendments or the few amendments that I've been able to highlight, it will be able to address the issues that the young people of this country, some of the issues that they've been indicating, where internship has not been very well structured in this country, and it will enable them to progress their careers. And one of the things that we should also be able to structure in this bill is to differentiate the internship by the national government and the internships by the county governments. And also, we should also indicate that the period that have been served by an intern should also be considered as part of the experience when an intern is also getting or applying for a permanent job in this country. Honorable Speaker, I beg to support.
Thank you. The member for Kitui West, you want to speak on this? Do you want to speak on this, member for Kitui West?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me say that from the onset that I support this bill. It's very important, especially for the unemployed graduates. This time in Kenya, we have so many people unemployed. The rate of unemployment is so high. So this bill is coming at the right time, especially to put the ones who are not employed through a program. Mr. Speaker, I note that it has not talked about the period of internship, although it's saying those ones who are not employed, but I thought it could talk about the period. Is it immediately after graduation? Because as I've said, the rate of unemployment is so high. So if you leave it open, even people who graduated like 20 years ago and have not gone through the internship, it will be open for them. So I think it's important that it states the period when this internship should be done. I have also noted that it's actually including some things which have not been included, like insurance. These days when they go for internship, there is no insurance, there is no medical cover, and this bill is actually addressing such. So it's a very a good bill and is taking care of that. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, I support, and I say I think it's good to address the period. Thank you.
Thank you. For Starehe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And from the onset, let me say I support this bill because it seeks to address some of the issues and most of the issues that the youth go through when it comes to matters employment. I think this is a step in the right direction, and this House should discuss more on these issues that have been raised even in what we've seen in the country, that the youth are claiming their space in this country. In matters internship, it goes without saying that this is an area that the youth have always experienced, have always been disadvantaged in terms of being manipulated and maybe being treated in not the right way. And I support my colleague who has come up with this bill because it seeks to address some of those challenges. Like, for example, if you look at the amount of exposure that these interns get at some of these areas they work in, it is very limited to being messengers. They are given these later duties. They are not exposed to attain experience in these fields that they work in. And it is only fair that we understand that the world is moving in a very revolving way. The world is advancing and the technologies are changing every now and then. Most of these interns possess great knowledge, great wisdom, and great ideas on how to move this country forward. And it is only right that from now going forward that we treat these interns in the right way and actually use their manpower to move this country forward. So I support this bill, and I also ask for the move of the bill to incorporate an element of making sure that once these interns finish the internship, they have a promise on being absorbed into these companies, into these areas that they work in, so that we can address the issue of unemployment. Mr. Speaker, we've seen the doctors' interns, people who are highly educated, suffering in the streets of Nairobi, asking the government of the day to absorb them and actually begging even for a stipend that has been reduced from 260,000 to a meager 30,000, something that is very not favorable in the economic times that we are in. It is time that this House actually addresses most of the issues that have been addressed by the youths, and we come up with more bills that are progressive like this one. I support the bill, and thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Member for Likoni.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I stand to support the Public Service Internship Bill 2222 by
on whether the Mombasa Gate Bridge project loan agreement was among the recently restructured midterm loans, and if so, provisions of details on the restructuring. Honorable Speaker, the committee has since received response from the Ministry of Roads and Transport, which I now wish to make. With regard on the loan agreement terms, the ministry submitted that the total cost of the constructing the bridge was approximately Japanese yen 180 billion, out of which Japanese yen 120 billion was to be paid by Jkia through the loan, whereas was to be paid for by the GOK for counterpart funding. Further, the ministry submitted that the completion of the detailed design phase, The project cost was appraised to a total estimated cost of Japanese yen 284.4 billion, which comprises of 194.52 Japanese yen of eligible cost and Japanese yen 89.843 for counterpart funding. The implementing agency, KENHA, has, through the Ministry of Roads and Transport, sought for commitment of funding from the National Treasury regarding, one, a formal commitment from Jkia on the release of the subsequent tranches of loans signed on 5th December 2019, and an appraisal of the loan from Japanese yen 120 to Japanese yen 194.53 billion to adequately cover for the eligible component of the project. Two, additional budget in the subsequent years to cover the counterpart funding amounting to Japanese yen 83.84 billion, with an immediate release of land acquisition funds amounting to Kenya shillings 19.4 billion. Provision of right-of-way, land acquisition and relocation of utilities as a prerequisite condition of contract that should be fulfilled prior to the commencement of the works. The ministry provided an assurance that a commitment of funding from the National Treasury was received on 19th January 2024. The GOK is therefore responsible for covering a counterpart funding portfolio totaling Japanese yen 83.843 billion, which includes payment for the following: 1, land acquisition and compensation; 2, general administration expenses; 3, taxes and duties. Honorable Speaker, with regard to the expected projected commencement date, the ministry submitted that the earliest possible commencement date for the construction of these works is projected to be October 2025. It is projected that the construction of the cable-stayed bridge will take 84 months, which is approximately 7 years. Further, the ministry submitted that a consultant has since commenced preparatory works which are necessary prior to the commencement of the construction works. These preparatory works include geotechnical investigation of the seabed for construction of cable-stayed bridge at Apaya 3, procurement of accredited checker, and establishment of the operations and maintenance entity and toll system are scheduled to be completed in January 2025. And thereafter, tendering for the construction work will commence. Due to the complexity of the project, the ministry observed that it is projected that the tendering period will be approximately 10 months, which includes bidding, evaluation, the seeking of no objection from the co-financiers, contract award, and issuance of commencement for works. Honorable Speaker, on the issue relating to the clarification of whether the project was among the recently restructured midterm loans, the ministry submitted it was not among those restructured project loans. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Komingo, have you finished? Mama Mishi?
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I want to appreciate the response which have been given by the chairperson of the relevant committee. But Honorable Speaker, can I maybe put a complementary question to get some substantiation, to get some clarity?
You can seek clarification on the statement given?
Yeah, because from the second response, you indicated that the possible commencement date for the construction is October 2025. How do you explain the discrepancy that the loan was first disbursed in 2020 and the project will begin in 2025? In addition, the loan term was 40 years with a grace period of 12 years from 2020, meaning the first repayment is in 2032. We are in 2024 and the commencement date for the project is October 2025. Can the ministry give a solid commitment that the project will begin in 2025? And how is the ministry planning to recover these lots since the project is off schedule? Are we going to have some challenges in terms of funding? Because now we are a bit late. The other one is, can the ministry tell us whether we have the 19.4 billion for land acquisition that has been budgeted for in the current financial year 2024-2025? Can you confirm that we have that fund? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Kamingoi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is imperative to note that while we discussed this with the Honorable Mishimboko, we actually agreed that the commencement, the earliest opportunity we have is 2025. What we put before the ministry is to make sure that the works are expedited, to make sure that they're completed within the 8-year window before the commencement of the works. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I think maybe in the next meeting we will respond on whether the National Treasury will approve the 19.2 billion, which is for land acquisition, with regard to the supplementary budget we have, the current one we are processing for her confirmation. Maybe we'll give that information the next meeting, maybe Thursday, for the purposes of confirming whether it is included within this supplementary budget one, which we are currently processing. Thank you.
Honorable Mishi, are you satisfied?
Honorable Speaker, I'm satisfied, but I also want to know who are the consultants on the ground so that key stakeholders like myself, representing the people of Likoni, can know them and understand what they are doing at the ground. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Komingoi.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, let me assure the member that we can procure those details as soon as they are made available to the committee and submit to her for the purposes of proper engagement with the stakeholders and the leadership within the Mombasa County and specifically Likoni constituency. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next, yourself again, Komingoi. Statement by Amina Munyanzi.
Honorable Speaker, regarding the aforementioned statement, the Honorable Amina Munyanzi specifically requested for details regarding the following issues. 1. Status of the processing and issuance of seafarers' identity document. Number 2, the number of applications received by the Kenya Maritime Authority and the number of SID issued from 2022 to date. 3, the challenges that have hindered the processing of seafarers' identity document. 4 is the plans that have been put in place to ensure that processing of seafarers' identity documents is fast-tracked. Honorable Speaker, the committee has since received response from the Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs, which I wish to now make. With regard to the status of the processing of and issuance of seafarers' identity documents, the ministry submitted that the State Department for Shipping and Maritime Affairs, in collaboration with the Kenya Maritime Authority, KMA, has been diligently engaged and advancing the implementation of the SID issuance process. However, the ministry acknowledged setbacks in the rollout of the documents since it was fairly new and not many countries had implemented and issued the SID. The ministry submitted that their efforts are concentrated on expediting the processing and issuance of SIDs to eligible seafarers. Further, the ministry submitted that the process is at the procurement stage, with the Kenya Maritime Authority being the procuring entity. The ministry stated that the procurement of SID was facing challenges due to the unresponsive tenders with the initial...
Order. Honorable Jeho, this is not a public baraza. Go on, Kamingoi.
Mr. Speaker, the ministry stated that the procurement of SIDs was facing challenges due to the unresponsive tenders, with the initial phase of tendering having been closed due to the following reasons: concerns over the tendering pricing, which exceeded market rates; impracticality of the proposed implementation period, which would have resulted in issuance of the documents in the year 2025. The ministry therefore submitted that the tender has to be reissued, and the process was on the second phase of tender process with pre-qualified suppliers identified. The document was slated to be dispatched to the bidders before May 20th, 2024. Honorable Speaker, with regard to the number of applications received by the Kenya Maritime Authority and the number of SIDs issued from 2022 to date, the ministry submitted that KMA has not received any application for SID, although acknowledged that there is a huge demand from seafarers of this document to be issued. Number 5, further, the ministry submitted that plans were underway to extend the SID issuance to all eligible seafarers once the processing and issuance procedures are finalized. The ministry is therefore focused on completing the necessary groundwork to facilitate a smooth and efficient rollout process, enabling eligible seafarers to obtain their SID without undue delay once the process is finalized. Honorable Speaker, on the issue regarding challenges that have hindered the processing of seafarers' identity documents, the ministry submitted that the implementation of the identity document presents unique challenges due to its stringent security requirements set by the international regulatory bodies such as the International Labour Organization ILO, International Maritime Organization IMO, the International Civil Aviation Organization ICAO. These regulations necessitate attention to detail to ensure compliance. The ministry observed that many countries have been quick to issue the SID and got it wrong, resulting in wastage of resources, a path we are trying to avoid. They are trying to avoid. Honorable Speaker, regarding the plans that have been put in place to ensure that processing of seafarers' identity documents is fast-tracked, the ministry submitted that the following measures have been instituted. 1, engaging in consultative meetings with ILO, conducting market surveys, and reviewing the implementation strategies adopted by the few countries that have successfully implemented the SID. This has provided insights and best practice informing the ministry implementation process. Number 2, Mr. Speaker, is streamlining the procedures to enhance efficiency and reduce processing time by optimizing workflows and eliminating unnecessary bureaucratic hurdles, aiming to expedite the issuance of SIDs without compromising on security standards. Number 3 is collaborating closely with the relevant stakeholders, including the Ministry of Immigration, to address technical challenges and enhance overall process efficiency. This collaborative effort ensures that all pertinent issues are addressed comprehensively, fostering a conducive environment for the swift SID processing. 4 is implementing a robust system of continuous monitoring and evaluation of the SID issuance process. This enables identification of any potential obstacles and bottlenecks, prompting and allowing for timely intervention and resolution. The ministry submitted that targeted timelines for the issuance of SIDs is to be June 2024. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Abina, are you satisfied?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Next statement request by Honorable Rael Kasiwai. Coming again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on Thursday, 2nd May 2024, the member for West Pokot County, the Honorable Rael Kasiwai, MP, requested for a statement from the chairperson of Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure regarding the state of Kapenguria, Lodwar Road. In the statement, Honorable Kasiwai sought to establish 1, the immediate measures the Ministry of Road and Transport is putting in place to rehabilitate Kapenguria Lodwar Road, and 2, the long-term measures the ministry is taking to ensure the safety of residents during heavy rains. Honorable Speaker, the committee has since received response from the Ministry of Roads and Transport, which I now wish to make. The ministry submitted that Kapenguria Lodwar Road is part of the national road network, which is managed by the ministry through its implementing agency, the Kenya National Highway Authority, KENHA. On 29th April 2024, a flash flood washed away a section of the road pavement in the vicinity of Lowe's Market in West Pokot County, which disrupted traffic flow at this location. Honorable Speaker, the following remedial measures were taken immediately to reinstate traffic movement and repair the road. KENHA immediately mobilized an emergency framework contractor to construct temporary diversion around the damaged road section. The temporary diversion allowed vehicles to bypass the affected section and enable resumption of traffic movement. The diversion was completed and made operational approximately 6 hours after the washout occurred. Number 2, once the temporary diversion was reconstructed and traffic flow was reinstated, the road maintenance team was able to complete installation of culverts and rebuilt the embankment and pavement which had been washed away, thus repairing the damage caused by the floods incident. The repaired section was opened to public traffic on 13th May 2024. Honorable Speaker, with regards to the long-term measures the ministry is taking to ensure safety of residents during heavy rains, the ministry stated that it has been progressively constructing sections of Kapenguria-Lodwar Road in the last few years. This reconstruction process includes replacing all drifts with bridges, installing culverts with high drainage capacity, widening the road cross-section, installing a stronger and more durable, gradually making the road more resilient to flood damage. The reconstructing, therefore, provides a permanent long-term solution to the disruption of traffic and risk to the safety of residents that are caused by flash floods from time to time. The ministry submitted that as of May 2024, the road section between Lokichar and Lodwar, together with a standalone bridge section at Kainuk, had been fully reconstructed, while the road section between Kapenguria and Lokichar were awaiting the commencement of reconstruction. Additionally, the government has secured support from development partners towards reconstructing all the roads section between Kitale, Kapenguria, Lokichar. The German Development Agency KfW will support the reconstruction of Kitale Morpus section, while the African Development Bank will support reconstruction of Morpus Lokichar section. Reconstructing of the Kitale Morpus section is anticipated to commence in July 2024 this year, Mr. Speaker, while the reconstruction of Morpus Lokichar section is anticipated to commence in the second quarter of the 2025 calendar year. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Kasiwai, member for Kapenguria, she's there. Honorable Kasiwai, you've heard the response. Give her the mic.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say the answer is okay, though I'm waiting to see it in action. Thank you.
Thank you. Next order. Hold. Yes, Clive.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm rising to follow up on a statement that I sought on 2nd May regarding the status of the Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Project. This is a statement I sought from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation regarding the status of the Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Project. Mr. Speaker, this was to follow up on what happened with the World Bank disbursement of US dollars 390 million disbursed in the year 2023. Mr. Speaker, while I sought that statement on 2nd May, I was informed that I will get a response 2 weeks later. I'm not sure whether Honorable Kiarie is still counting the 2 weeks or he meant 2 years. Honorable Kiarie. So, Mr. Speaker.
Is he here?
He's here.
KJ?
Honorable Speaker,
yes.
Honorable Speaker, it is true that we had given a commitment for 2 weeks, and the committee has been applying itself on the matter, but save for the disruptions that have been there in terms of workings of our committees, it has taken a bit longer than we expected. Honorable Speaker, in a week and a half, we shall be presenting our report on the statement that had been sought by the honorable member.
Thank you.
It's an assurance that we give.
Next order.
Order number 8, the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 38 of 2024, first reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Division of Revenue Act 2024.
Hold on. Honorable members, on the request of the majority leader, I will rearrange the order paper a little so that order number 10 precedes order number 9. So clerk, call out order number 10. When we are done with order number 10, then we'll come back to order number 9.
Order number 10, motion, consideration of Senate amendments to the Conflict of Interest Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2023.
Honorable members who are on the screen, if you had logged in to speak to order number 9, you may log out so that we have new interest developing on the new bill, on the motion on the conflict of interest bill. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I beg to move that the Senate amendments to the Conflict of Interest Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2023, be now considered. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the Standing Order number 48.
Leader, hold on a bit. Take your seat. Order, honorable members, I'll take you back to order number 3. Majority Leader, you hold. Those members on their feet, take your seats. Honorable Mudhoni, take the nearest seat. Millie, do the same. Order. Honorable Farah, take the nearest seat. Order. Honorable Mukunji, take the nearest seat. Honorable members, I have a message to convey from His Excellency the President. Honorable members, the message is on the nomination of persons for appointment to offices of Cabinet Secretaries. Honorable members, Standing Order 42-1 relating to messages from the President provide that the Speaker shall read to the House any message from the President delivered to the Speaker for communication to the House. In this regard, I wish to convey to the House that this afternoon I have received a further message from His Excellency the President notifying the nomination of various persons to appointment to the offices of Cabinet Secretaries. The names are in addition to the ones I conveyed to the House yesterday. In the message, His Excellency the President conveys that in exercise of powers conferred on him by Articles 152(2) of the Constitution, as read together with Section 3 and 5 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, he nominates various persons for appointment to the aforementioned offices. For clarity, Article 152(2) of the Constitution states, and I quote, "The President shall nominate and with the approval of the National Assembly appoint Cabinet Secretaries." The names of persons submitted to this House for approval for appointment as Cabinet Secretaries are as follows: John Mbandi Ngongo, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, the Order, Millie, Cabinet Secretary, the National Treasury and Economic Planning. Honorable Salim Mvuriangala Mugala, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. Honorable Rebecca Miano, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Tourism and Wildlife. Honorable James Opio Wandai, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. Honorable Onesimus Kipchumba Murkomen, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports. Honorable Hassan Ali Joho, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Youth, Ministry of Mining, Blue Economy and Maritime Affairs. Honorable Dr. Alfred Nganga Mutua, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Labor and Social Protection. Honorable Wycliffe Ambetsa Oparanya, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Cooperative and Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development. Honorable Justin Betan Njoka Muturi, EGH, Cabinet Secretary, Minister of Public Service and Human Capital Development. Honorable Ms. Stella Soy Langat, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Gender, Culture, the Arts and Heritage. In view of the foregoing and pursuant to the provisions of Section 8 of the Public Appointments, Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011, Order Mayaka. In view of the foregoing and pursuant to the provisions of Section 8 of the Public Appointments, Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, as read together with the Standing Order 42.3, I hereby refer the message from the President together with the curriculum vitae of the nominees to the Committee on Appointments. Honorable members, Section 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011 provides that unless otherwise provided in law, the committee to which such nomination is referred shall consider the matter and table a report in the House within 28 days. It is therefore imperative that the Committee on Appointments consolidates the names contained in the two lists and immediately commence the process of consideration of the nominees. The committee is expected to immediately notify the nominees and the general public, commence the necessary approval hearings and table its report in the House soonest to enable the House to consider the nominees within the stipulated timelines. I thank you. Call out again now order number 10. Number 9.
Order number 10, motion, consideration of Senate amendments to the Conflict of Interest Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2023.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, allow me to move that the Senate amendments to the Conflict of Interest Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2023, be now considered. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 48, allow me to move this motion in an amended form, which is that the Senate amendments to the Conflict of Interest Bill. Honorable Speaker, if you can
Order, honorable members. Order. Honorable Raphael Wanjala. Recess quietly. Members on their feet, take your seats. Honorable Sirima, you're a senior. You should be the last to interrupt proceedings. Members who wish to walk out of the chamber, do it with order. This bill that is being moved has tremendous consequences on many of the things that this country is doing. And I would expect you to listen to the majority leader, contribute where you can, or vote when the vote is called. It is not fair for you to vote on a bill you have not even listened to.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I think members are a bit excited because of the communication you made, especially considering that there are a number of nominees who are members of this House, and it is premature of us to get excited because we are expected to vet these nominees. And I could only take this opportunity to congratulate my good friend, the Honorable Millie Mabona Odhiambo, who I see has taken over a seat, not a position. And any member can sit anywhere, by the way. Therefore, allow me, Honorable Speaker, I was saying, understanding under 48, to allow me to move this motion in an amended form, which is that the Senate amendments to the Conflict of Interests Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2023, be now rejected. Honorable Speaker, under the normal circumstances, such a motion to consider Senate amendments to a bill that originated from the National Assembly would ordinarily be moved by the chairperson of the relevant committee, under whose mandate the bill falls, and in this case, I think it's the Jkia committee. And Honorable Speaker, in the present case, I have decided to move this motion as the sponsor of the bill to expedite its consideration owing to the peculiar circumstances of the positions taken by the two houses of the bill, on the bill, Honorable Speaker. And thank you, Honorable Speaker, that you have pointed it out to members that this bill has huge implications on the conduct of business for both public and state officers, and therefore it's important that members pay keen attention to all the amendments that were proposed by the Senate, which were communicated to the House on the 4th of June 2024, and the amendments were committed to the Departmental Committee on Jkia for consideration and reporting to the House. The nature of the amendments received from the Senate has largely informed my decision to move this motion to catalyze its inevitable referral to mediation. Because, Honorable Speaker, as I said, the Senate made amendments that would necessitate us getting into a process of mediation. And however long Jkia team takes, I think the end result will be the same, getting into a mediation committee that can unlock the extremely divergent views of the two houses on the content of the bill, which I will shortly highlight. Honorable Speaker, when I introduced this bill, it sought to repeal the Public Officer Ethics Act of 2003 and establish a framework for managing conflict of interest in the discharge of public duties under the general supervision of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC. Currently, Honorable Speaker, the Public Officer Ethics Act establishes various entities as responsible commissions for various state and public officers. For instance, Honorable Speaker, the Committee of Powers and Privileges of the National Assembly is the responsible commission for these members of parliament who are not listening, Honorable Speaker. It is the responsible commission for members of the National Assembly, while the Parliamentary Service Commission is the responsible commission for all parliamentary staff. The bill, as published, sought to change this by making EACC responsible for all state and public officers. Honorable Speaker, when this House considered the bill, it made various... I shall not repeat because you are asked by the Speaker to pay attention. I have told you, under the Public Officers and Ethics Act, it establishes various commissions that are responsible for the conduct of overseeing the conflict of interest. Under this act, the Powers and Privileges Committee of the National Assembly is the responsible commission under the act for members of parliament, while the Parliamentary Service Commission is the responsible commission for members of staff. And I further said that the bill, as published, sought to change this by making EACC the responsible commission for all state and public officers. I further told you that when this House considered the bill, and we did all consider in second reading and the committee of the whole, we made various amendments which sought to do a number of things, including one, maintaining the existing model of wealth declarations to entities that directly supervise the conduct and ethics of the various categories of public officers. In this regard, the House agreed to repeal the Public Officer Ethics Act and insisted on transferring specific provisions from the Act to the bill. Two, we align the bill with the responsibilities of members of parliament, and this is important, members, that when in committee of the whole we considered amendments, we aligned the bill to your responsibilities as members of parliament on declaration of conflict of interest in parliamentary debate under the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act of 2017. You remember the bill as was published was creating a conflict of interest even on matters that pertain to your work as a member of parliament. And we sought to make those amendments during the committee of the whole. 3, we expanded the declarations to include previous categories of public and state officers that were not expressly provided for under the Public Officer and Ethics Act, for instance, that of the Chief Justice and Cabinet Secretaries. 4, we limited the definition of the word relative. Those who are here during second reading, you will all recall the very broad definition of the word relative in the conduct of affairs of a state or public officer, and we limited this definition to the affairs of a state or public officer and his or her dependent children. And we also, in 5, prohibited, not only prohibiting public officers from contracting with public bodies in which they are employed. You will recall the bill as published prohibited public and state officers and their broad definition of relatives from conducting business with any entity of government. Conversely, Honorable Speaker, from the message received from the Senate has reversed everything that this House passed. The Senate has deleted and proposed repeal of the Public Officer Ethics Act. This has resulted in the proposed repeal of clauses, including those on functions of the Commission, participation of members in proceedings before Parliament or county assemblies. Therefore, there is debate you cannot interact with as a member of Parliament or as a member of county assemblies on the basis of what the Senate has done. Acquisition of interest in partnerships and private companies, restricted gainful employment, for instance, people who are here and are lawyers, professional accountants, etc. The register of conflict of interest, where this register will be. Prohibitions on state officers after leaving office, having served as a state officer, what other gainful employment can you get into? And we had made amendments relating to that. The prohibition against representing people before reporting entities, and declaration of income, assets, and liabilities by public officers. Honorable Speaker, additionally, the Senate has deleted the EACC as administrator of the bill and deleted all provisions on conflicts of interest in the Public Officer Ethics Act, the Leadership and Integrity Act, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, and the Senate amendments are the complete opposite of what the National Assembly considered and passed in the bill. I therefore move that the Honorable Speaker, I've just given the background of what we had done in this bill and what the Senate has proposed to do in the amendments that I'm calling on the House to reject. Because what the amendments that the Senate has passed, besides negating everything that we did to make this bill become workable, what the Senate has done, and without casting aspersions on the other House, Honorable Speaker, must be informed by a huge conflict of interest in the other House. Because, Honorable Speaker, you appreciate this is a House that has been unable to impeach even a single governor. And I saw them the other day pontificating on issues to do with integrity and corruption in this country, Honorable Speaker. But, Honorable Speaker, and you know, we have restrained ourselves over the last 2 years from discussing the other House or even the conduct of members of that House, even under extreme provocation. But, Honorable Speaker, we must stand with the people of Kenya. This bill is critical in the fight against corruption. The dilution that the other House, Senate, has visited on this bill makes this bill completely unworkable.
it creates a very fertile ground for corruption and conflict of interest to continue taking root in our republic, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, we must be the bigger brother between the two houses. We must be the house that stands with the people of Kenya who have spoken loudly and told us that matters touching on conflict of interest, matters touching on theft of public resources must come to an end. We must be that house, Honorable Speaker, that today will stand with the people of Kenya and tell our brothers in the Senate that it will not be business as usual for governors to steal and get away scot-free with what they have stolen from the people of Kenya, knowing that because of conflict of interest, they can influence what will happen in the other house and their county assemblies. We must be that house. Honorable Speaker, this house has a singular responsibility of being the people's representatives, while the other house represents counties. Being the people's representatives, Honorable Speaker, we must be the ones to stand today with the people of Kenya. And I think, Honorable Speaker, listening to what Kenyans are saying out there, and I have seen this being one of the bills that even the young Kenyans in our country and other Kenyans of goodwill who want a change in the manner things are done in this country have asked the Houses of Parliament to expedite with, is this bill. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we have a national duty to reject these amendments, get into mediation, and show our brothers and sisters in the other house that it is only right to do what is good for the greater good of our people, not what is good for leaders and public officers who hold office. Honorable Speaker, this bill, and I have heard in today's communication from the President, he has also alluded to it, is an important bill not just for us as public and state officers, even to protect ourselves as state officers against accusations, unfair accusations of engaging in corruption or corrupt activities, but also in protecting the assets of the Kenyan people against public and state officers, Honorable Speaker, and even people in the private sector, Honorable Speaker. This bill was misconstrued in the other house to be speaking to just public and state officers. The conduct of corrupt activities in this country, Honorable Speaker, is also largely driven by the private sector. This conflict of interest bill speaks also to conflict of interest by the private sector. 1 minute. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I was saying, for instance, if you look at the lot and the looting that has pervaded in the old NHIF, the National Health Insurance Fund, it has not come out of conflict of interest by particularly state officers. Private entities have engaged in massive looting and corruption in NHIF. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, when you run a private hospital and you engage with a public entity, it is only a law like this that will protect the assets of the Kenyan people. And I want to beg this House, as I move and call on the Vice Chair of the Jailer Committee, the Honorable Mwengi Mutuse, to second, I want to call on this House to reject in total all the amendments by the Senate to protect the people of Kenya from conflict of interest, corruption, and wanton looting of their assets and resources. I beg to move and ask Honorable Mutuse to second.
Mutuse.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to second the motion that has been ably moved by our majority leader, that the Senate amendments to the conflict of interest bill that was considered by my committee, the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, that have been referred to this House by the Senate be rejected. Mr. Speaker, the amendments that have been referred by the Senate are very retrogressive. They are in themselves going to undermine very directly the war on corruption. They are in themselves making the conflict of interest bill an empty shell of its former objectives. Mr. Speaker, all of us in this House agree that the reason why we have wanton corruption in the national government and in the county governments is because those who are in leadership are able to do and transact with the offices that they also superintend. And the bill intends to remove conflict of interest so that government entities are not corrupted by people who have been appointed or elected into office.
the Senate has made amendments that make it possible, for example, for a permanent secretary to own a company and do business in a state department that the permanent secretary is an accounting officer. This House must stand and say that this cannot be allowed. Out there, Kenyans are saying that we are able to fund our own development, that we may not even be able to need to increase taxes if we are able to take care of corruption and take care of wastage. What the Senate is doing through the amendments is to legalize corruption, is to make it possible for a member of parliament, for example, to be able to transact with the Parliamentary Service Commission, which in itself is even rejected under our own parliamentary privileges and standing orders. So, Mr. Speaker, as I second this motion, I urge the House to reject the Senate amendments and that the bill be referred under Article 113 for mediation, so that we do not undermine the war on corruption and that we take into effect the voice of Kenyans. And therefore, I second and urge that we reject the Senate amendments and refer the bill for mediation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and urge the House to do as required through the powers conferred on the Speaker under Article 113 to appoint a mediation committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, I now propose the question, which is that the Senate amendments to the Conflict of Interest Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2023 be now considered. And remember that the Majority Leader moved it in an amended form. So, Dindi Nyoro, are you here on budget? No contributors? Yes. Wangare? Wangare wants to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the Majority Leader on this bill. And Mr. Speaker, I think the most saddening thing with the amendments done by the Senate is that it takes us very far back in the war of corruption. Mr. Speaker, the issues we have been dealing with for the last 1 month or so, generated by Kenyans, by Genz, by civil society, Mr. Speaker, most of them could be sorted if we dealt with corruption. Because, Mr. Speaker, every year we have had issues of pilferages of money, both at the national level and at the county level. So, Mr. Speaker, anything that would jeopardize that fight should be rejected, and we should actually support this bill and the way we had passed it, Mr. Speaker. And we shall reject the amendments of the Senate and go with what we had passed as the National Assembly, because they called us sitting, the Senate called us sitting, and I'm avoiding to dwell into casting aspersions to the Senate, but I think the Senate has lost the track of what they should be doing. Because, Mr. Speaker, one of the biggest issues we have is that we have so much money going to the counties, but we don't see the value of it. We don't see governors being held accountable. In other words, Mr. Speaker, what we have seen is the Senate being obsessed. And I say that because I've been a former senator, Mr. Speaker, that they forget their major and main mandate of protecting the counties, Mr. Speaker. What we have seen is that we have should actually be calling the governors and the CECs from the counties to show accountability, because the mandate of oversight of government in the national level is vested in this House, Mr. Speaker. We must actually, Mr. Speaker, have the conversation of whether a CS should appear before the Senate or it should be a governor and the CECs, Mr. Speaker, because we have now our CSs giving excuses that they are not able to come to this National Assembly because either in the morning they were in the Senate or in the afternoon they were in the Senate. It has become a matter of duplication, Mr. Speaker, and we should be able to deal with it at some point. But on this bill, Mr. Speaker, even the President, as he made this address that he made earlier, Mr. Speaker, he alluded to this issue, because if we do not deal with matter governance, with matter corruption, then we'll have done nothing, Mr. Speaker. So I hope that we'll do justice, and the members that will be chosen under Article 113 on mediation can be able to do justice to this bill, so that we can be able to properly deal with corruption. Because you cannot say you're taking from this hand and the right hand is hidden behind, Mr. Speaker. So I actually support the majority leader, and that we should reject the amendments done by the Senate and this bill to proceed as it was, Mr. Speaker, so that we are able to deal properly with the issues that have been raised for the last few weeks. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oundo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. When we enacted the new constitution under Chapter 6, we were very careful. We knew absolute power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's why Chapter 6 of integrity and leadership was inserted in the constitution. We proceeded to prepare an act of parliament that made a mockery of Chapter 6. We proceeded to have various anti-corruption laws that do not seem to be biting, because outside the Honorable Speaker, many Kenyans believe is the elected leaders, is the political class that the purveyors of corruption in this country. Honorable Speaker, we as Parliament, and that includes National Assembly and Senate, if we can water down the bill that we passed here to make it practically impossible to hold accountable elected leaders, then, Honorable Speaker, we are taking this country into abyss. And that's why I support, as moved by the majority leader, that what Senate did was a great disservice for this country. And, Honorable Speaker, I think Senate is suffering from inferiority complex. Senate thinks that members of Parliament here, National Assembly, have got so much money that they are wallowing in a lot of money. And that's why they go to the pettiness to come and see how many cars are in the parking slot of the National Assembly. How many new cars or how many new tires members of Parliament have bought. They have this misconception, even those who have been here, Honorable Speaker, that members of Parliament use CDF to fund their personal lifestyle. Honorable Speaker, we cannot afford to allow conflict of interest not to be called out. Honorable Speaker, where we are in a position of influence. So if we allow ourselves to also start doing business with our own entity, it means therefore, Honorable Speaker, no other Kenyan will ever get a contract, will ever get any job in this country unless you know somebody. We must win ourselves this mentality that you must know somebody for you to get employed, that you must be connected to you for get a tender, that you must bribe for you to be paid for any work you have done anywhere. Honorable Speaker, I want to urge those who will be appointed to go to mediation committee. I want to urge, because at times have been some of them, senators can bully ordinary members to accept their way. Here we go with the irreducible minimum. The irreducible minimum is the bill that we passed in this House. Any other story, Honorable Speaker, we will expose them and surrender them to Gen Z to deal with them accordingly. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support the motion by the majority leader.
Member for Gishugu. Give him the mic.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support the motion as moved by the leader of my majority. And Honorable Speaker, the principle of conflict of interest has been there for many, many years. And it has been loosely been used under the tenets of natural justice. And this issue has been left by the courts to determine whether there is conflict of interest or not. But now here comes a law that is very explicit to explain matters of conflict of interest. And this House, Mr. Speaker, will not allow Senate to stand on the way of Kenyans in fight of corruption, because that is what they want us to, they want to take us back to. And we have to stand as a House and support the government, which is now committed towards fighting corruption. And the executive, through the president, has already pronounced itself that this is a government that is willing to fight corruption. And therefore, Senate should not come on the way of the will of the Kenyans to fight corruption. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, without belaboring the points, I support the motion as moved and will reject in totality the proposals that have been made by the Senate. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
KJ.
Mr. Speaker, I do stand up to support the report as presented and amended by the Leader of Majority, and also to object to the changes that have been put in by the Senate. Honorable Speaker, right from the onset, I'd like to say that this bill in itself was a great opportunity for this House to start addressing some of the matters that are being conversed, even by the young people who are calling themselves Gen Zs. The issue of conflict of interest in the management of affairs of government is a thorn in the flesh to this country. So, Mr. Speaker, where this House was seeking to remedy some of these maladies, it looks like Senate is keen on taking us back to a place where we are not able to counter the issue of conflict of interest. And for that reason, Mr. Speaker, I do object. Mr. Speaker, the issues that are being canvassed in the country today are calling us to order. It is at a point like this when we ought to ask ourselves as a republic, issues of conflict of interest aside, even the constitution of this country, Mr. Speaker, is now ready for an audit. This constitution has been with us for a good 15 years. It is at this point that we should ask ourselves, how has this constitution served us in the last 15 years? And when we audit the constitution, we shall put Senate on the spot. We shall ask ourselves, in its composition as it is right now, Mr. Speaker, is the Senate serving Kenya right? And to my mind, there are some amendments in the Constitution that would occasion for us to relook at how Senate is constituted. As it is, Mr. Speaker, Senate is required to be attending to the matters of counties, Mr. Speaker. And even as the Gen Zs are calling out the rot in the national government, we know that there are even bigger problems in the counties, Mr. Speaker. And if Senate was true to its roles, Senate would have already gone into these county governments and checked on the rot that is happening in the executives of counties, Mr. Speaker. The rot and the conflict of interest that is happening in the business that is being conducted in counties. So, Mr. Speaker, I do object vehemently, and I say that even as we are looking at these matters of conflict of interest, it is the right time that this country had a conversation with itself on how the Constitution has served us for the last 15 years. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I do believe that if we look at how Senate is composed, we as a country might decide to borrow a leaf from jurisdictions like that of the UK, where the House of Commons has its job laid out for itself. But the House of Senate in the UK, Mr. Speaker, and you would be one to tell us, is a house that is reserved for very esteemed people and citizens, Mr. Speaker. That if we were to recompose our Senate, we might decide that we shall reserve the Senate for those Kenyans who have served so diligently in very specific areas, and they would be the people that we would be nominating to Senate, so that it is a proper nyumba la wazee, which advises the country on very topical and very technical issues from a point of information. As it is right now, the Senate does find itself at times with no business to prosecute other than to meddle with the work that is being done by the National Assembly. And as such, they use their time to do what we have seen this afternoon. So, Mr. Speaker, I object the amendments made by Senate, and I do support the report as presented and as amended and presented by the Leader of Majority. I do support, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Those who are on the screen, like Ndindi Nyoro, Johanna Ngeno, John Gitonga, you are all for appropriations. Now the mover should be called upon to reply. Majority Leader, you may now reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And let me thank the few members who have contributed and commit that we will, upon rejection of the amendments from the Senate, and I want to beg that members do vote to reject, we will immediately constitute a mediation committee to be able to consider this bill and amendments afresh. I therefore beg to reply.
Order, members, take your seats. Members on their feet, Sabina Chege, take your Order, Sabina Chege, take a seat. Wamshomba, take your seat. Pasaris, take your seat. Honorable members, I now put the question, and those who vote yes will be supporting the amendments from the Senate, and those who vote no will be rejecting. I now put the question, which is that the Senate amendments to the Conflict of Interest Bill, National Assembly Bill number 12 of 2023 be now considered. As members of that opinion say aye. As members of the contrary opinion say nay. Nay. The nays have it. Go back to order number 9.
Order number 9, motion, consideration of the first supplementary estimates for the financial year 2024-2025 general debate.
Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, you are the mover, right? Okay. Johanna Ngeno, you are not ready. John Gitonga.
Thank you, Speaker.
Yeah. Are you ready to speak?
Okay. Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. I want to thank you for this opportunity also to contribute on this budget, supplementary budget. Speaker, we have realized that there has been difficulties in the country, Mr. Speaker, and this prompted the withdrawal of the finance bill, which was meant to finance to some extent some of the expenditures in our budget, Speaker, and therefore there had to be some austerity measures and some changes to accommodate the much we can collect. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank the chair for budget for sitting and looking into the issues that we had tabled before the committee. And Speaker, I want to say that as a committee for housing, we factored in, of course, Mr. Speaker, the issues, the needs, which, of course, the people of this country were expecting to appear in that particular supplementary budget. Speaker, we want also to understand that this supplementary budget will have a lot of constraints, and of course, there are so many shortfalls, and especially on funding some vital projects and programs. Mr. Speaker, I particularly, the State Department for Public Works was majorly affected, Mr. Speaker. And remember, this is a very vital organ, especially on inspecting and monitoring and evaluating all the projects which are done in the country, Mr. Speaker. But most importantly, remember the rain that ravaged the country, Mr. Speaker, carried so many food breaches which had been done to allow students cross over to the other areas, to allow even women who are crossing to the other areas for markets carrying their products. Mr. Speaker, we heard, or the State Department had requested for the construction of the food bridges to allow these crossovers. But Mr. Speaker, due to the fall of the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, the whole budget which was allocating these particular activities was completely downed. Mr. Speaker, the budget also has given breadth
to the employment permanently of the GSS teachers. Remember, Mr. Speaker, we still have a very big and a huge challenge on the issue of GSS, on the issue of our classrooms. Mr. Speaker, this CBC was introduced without considering so many factors. Now it is a baby that we have to nurture. It is something that we have to deal with. It is a matter that we cannot throw it out of the window, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when this budget was cut, the President looked into whether we are going to throw out the GSS teachers, because that was a very big challenge. But in his wisdom and the wisdom of the Budget Committee, they have managed to allocate good funds to ensure that we have all these GSS teachers employed and be placed under permanent employment. Mr. Speaker, remember this is a very vital area. We also ensure that the CBA, collective bargaining agreement, is considered. And this is a very vital thing, which of course will also give our teachers our teachers comfort, because you know, Mr. Speaker, the foundation of this country is based on education. And just like what somebody said, or a very great person one day said, and education is an equalizer. It is a factor that equalizes all the rich and the poor. They put them in the same pool, Mr. Speaker. So this budget is considering majorly and putting into serious consideration on matters of education, because that is one area that we consider as very fundamental. Mr. Speaker, we know even the roads, we know the electricity, the energy, the Ministry of Energy, most of the issues were cut. But Mr. Speaker, most importantly, now that from the mood of the communication you just sent to this House, Mr. Speaker, you read to this House, Mr. Speaker, where most of the nominees to the cabinet are now from the opposition side, Mr. Speaker. I hope I hope it is now going to bring harmony in this House and especially in the country, so that whatever business we are going to be transacting in this House will sail through. And I'm taking this opportunity to welcome members of the opposition now that they are part of government, to help this country to stabilize. And I know the reason why we had that particular move, Mr. Speaker, is to allow this country to have stability, allow this country to move forward, allow this country to focus, allow this country to actually ensure that all the issues, all the projects which have been slated are properly delivered and done. And even as we are passing this supplementary budget one, Mr. Speaker, I wish, as a word of caution, Mr. Speaker, we have seen, even in our committees when we were trying to pass some of the proposals by the state departments, we wanted to ensure that most of the monies, because, Mr. Speaker, where we are collecting this money, the people of the Republic who we are taxing to get this money are going through a lot of pain. So our major request and demand by this House, Mr. Speaker, is that any money allocated for majorly projects, Mr. Speaker, should be utilized on projects, and especially projects, Mr. Speaker, which bring development to our people and to the people of this Republic. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to say that we will, as much as possible, try to cut some of the expenditures. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, the cuts which have been placed on development areas, Mr. Speaker, the little that has remained must be properly utilized. And now that we are having almost a new cabinet, though some of them are the same old faces, but we are having almost a new cabinet. We want to ask the members of the cabinet who are coming in, where especially if they were to be passed or vetted and passed in this House, Mr. Speaker, that it is time to work for this country. It is not time to work for yourself. This is no time to reap. This is no time to steal. This is no time to waste. These are monies which we collect painfully from the people of this Republic. So even as we are going to vet these particular cabinet secretaries whose names have been forwarded to this House, Mr. Speaker, our core mandate as this House is to ensure that we vet and pass members of the cabinet who we know their background has nothing to do with corruption. And if they pass that test, Mr. Speaker, we hope they are going to deliver to this nation. They are going to build this nation. They are going to work hard, just like what the president is trying to do, so that we don't look back and say, these are the people who failed this country. So each one of us has a responsibility. As a house, we have the responsibility. As a cabinet, they have the responsibility. As a president, also has the responsibility to ensure that whatever money we appropriate in this house, Mr. Speaker, that whatever money we tax the people of this country, Mr. Speaker, and put in the budget must be properly utilized without corruption, without stealing. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support.
Nairobi Women Rep. Oh, you are not ready. Oh, Rosa Buyu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, in supporting the supplementary that we've just had, I would like to thank the Genz for giving us the opportunity to relook at that budget. Mr. Speaker, I actually support, because when you look at what has been presented now, there's a lot of austerity measures that's been put in place, which means that money is going to go to good use. Mr. Speaker, however, I would like to say that there's still opportunity to better that budget by looking at duplication in different ministries. Mr. Speaker, when that is realigned, I'm sure the budget will even be lower. But Mr. Speaker, this afternoon, as a woman who has been on the forefront in the women's movement, I want to take this opportunity as a key member of ODM and Azimio. I want to take this opportunity to announce the new leader of minority, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Millie Odhiambo Mabona. Mr. Speaker, nobody should tell me that I have no authority to do that. I've been in ODM since its inception from 2005. And I've seen women be so loyal to this party called ODM. I've seen women be on the forefront of Azimio. And it is time that a woman is given an opportunity to lead this party in the House. Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking of a woman who's distinguished in terms of her contribution.
Yes, order. There's a point of order. Yes, Kamket. What's your point of order? Yes, Kamket.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
I'm standing on standing order number 91, and also on relevance, and also, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is is anticipating debate, because there is no motion in this House, Mr. Speaker, about any appointment. There is no motion on this floor about any appointment of anyone to anywhere. And from the experience, Mr. Speaker, from our own experience yesterday, we now know that what is announced outside,
what is your point of order?
There, on two matters. Is she in order, Mr. Speaker, for the honorable lady to anticipate debate? And two, is she relevant in what she's saying? Is what she's saying relevant to the debate on supplementary?
Continue.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not preempting any debate. I'm not talking about any cabinet minister, but I'm talking about a seat that seems to be vacant, and I'm talking about a distinguished member of this National Assembly. I'm talking about a woman who is having her 4th term, and a woman who's distinguished in debates in this House. I'm talking about a distinguished lawyer, and I'm talking about a distinguished human rights defender. And I'm saying it is time for Millie Odhiambo Mabona to take the leadership of minority. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order, honorable lady members. I know you are operating within the exuberance of feminism, but your wailing in the House is out of order. Next, we have John Gitonga. Is he here? You know, some of you key in and then leave. Is he here? No. Kiaria?
Mr. Speaker, it's a great honor to be contributing to this motion on supplementary budget. And as I speak chairing the Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation. And Mr. Speaker, yes, we have been given an opportunity to look at the budget. We in the sector are actually running into a big problem, even with the budget cuts that are happening. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the trend of how the cuts were done at Treasury, they were targeted on certain issues. In the attempt to implement austerity measures, the area of communication is greatly affected across board. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, there are ministries and departments and agencies in these governments whose sole responsibility is communication, Mr. Speaker. For example, there is the Department of Broadcast and Telecommunication. In the blanket cuts, this department has been left with a situation where we might go for an entire year where they are only able to pay salaries but not conduct any developmental issue, being that their core business is communication, in such a way that if blanket cuts are done across board, affecting communication, their core business is greatly affected. Mr. Speaker, I do support the supplementary budget as we have done. However, Mr. Speaker, it must be said in this parliament that Treasury ought to change its budgeting regime and the way that it does budgeting. Mr. Speaker, Treasury in this country has budgeted for ministries and departments in the same way as it has since 1963, so that sectors that have traditionally enjoyed big budgets continue to enjoy inordinately bigger budgets. The traditional sectors that are capital intensive, that are infrastructure intensive, have continually enjoyed big budgets that probably are even budgeted for corruption, Mr. Speaker. Emerging sectors, Mr. Speaker, like the sector of telecommunication, the sector of innovation, the sector of information, some of which were small departments in traditional bigger sectors. For example, the sector of ICT and digital economy was traditionally a small department within energy. In Treasury, to their mind, ICT and digital economy still remains in their mind a small department within energy. But if you look at the bottom-up economic transformational agenda, if you look at Marshall plans like the Kenya Superhighway, Digital Superhighway program, if you look at Vision 2030, emerging sectors like ICT and the digital economy might be the place where we find a solution for the issues that are being canvassed, even the issues that are being canvassed by the Gen Z on the streets. They are talking about youth engagement. They are talking about employment. This employment will not come from the bigger sectors. It will not come from corporate Kenya. These youth will be meaningfully engaged if members in this house are able to institute digital innovation hubs in each and every ward of this country. It will happen when we are able to make connectivity, get to places like Jkia and Mandera and the other far-flung places in this country. These opportunities will be available when our young people are able to get digital online jobs, where they are able to go to a digital innovation hub in their village and they are able to be paid in dollars. But Mr. Speaker, that is the case we find ourselves in, where Treasury is still budgeting in the way they used to budget in the 60s. Mr. Speaker, our sector in the ICT and digital economy has proven that if you invest 1 shilling, you're going to reap 5 shillings out of that investment. So what we are decrying here, Mr. Speaker, I do stand up as a village crier, saying that even as we prosecute these budgets, Parliament will have to apply itself better so that we can remedy the ills that are coming from Treasury, which are traditionally budgeting in a way that does not benefit us and does not drive us in the way of solving some of the problems that the young people are telling us. So, Mr. Speaker, I do support the consideration of this first supplementary budget, and I do laud the members of the Digital Economy Committee, up to and including the Honorable Dr. Bensouda, who I see here, because they applied themselves well in this supplementary budget to be able to remedy some of those ills that we picked out that were occasioned by the way that Treasury is budgeting for this country. And I want to laud these members of our ICT committee and remind you that in the absence of a committee of the future in this jurisdiction, the Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation is actually the committee of the future. And we shall take our rightful place as Parliament so that we budget as is required by the Constitution, where budgeting happens on this floor in this House. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I do support.
Zamzam, you are on the... Oh, is that... Who is the member at the end? Mwalio. Honorable Mwalio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I want to stand to support the supplementary one estimates and be able to hear some grievances that the supplementary budget has created. In this supplementary, then the cuts that we have been able to cut, we have been able to remove entirely majority of the development funds in many sectors and also the ministries. And what we are doing by so doing is that we are taking people out of business and also creating unemployment. Because if there is no development, it means that the contractors that have been able to be given some contracting, they have been able to win some tenders, and they have been able to do some works. They are going to have pending bills, and also they are going to lay down the workers that have been employed and engaged in those contracts. Therefore, it is very important to think out of the box, to be able to at least to keep some little money in a development instead of removing all the 100% development funds, because it is going to take people to the streets without any employment. If you see the building sector, whereby the contractors normally engage with the government, because the government is the biggest employer of all the contractors, then those workers are going to be left with any job because there is nothing for development for this year. Number two, in our Committee of Trade, Industry and the Cooperatives, we had checked whereby we can take out money and put whereby we can create some employment in some EPZ, SEZ, in the river tax, in the new KCC, whereby we were creating some jobs for the Kenyans, because the Genzs are crying because there is no employment. So let us think to be able to be conscious to create some employment so that we can accommodate some of our young people that are in the streets every day. So we will be able to maybe to make some amendments in the third reading so that we can be able to create some room even for some people to create some employment somewhere so that these young people can be engaged in some of the developments that are going on. We were told that in the EPZ, they are all lined up of investors who are coming up to invest in those sheds. And those sheds, the money has been removed. So we will not be able to create any employment, and also the investors will find there is nothing, no infrastructure that has been done for them to be able to engage in a meaningful manufacturing, in a meaningful engagement with the government. So let us think twice as we remove and we make the future budgets, so that our goal should be more so by creating employment. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to give my opinion on the debate concerning the budget estimates that have been tabled. And I want to, first of all, thank the young people of Kenya, because it is because of them that they have given us an opportunity to review these budget estimates and relook at areas where we can be able to reduce our expenditure and plan our money economy in a better way. Mr. Speaker, whereas I support the intentional move by the Budget Committee to allocate more funds in areas where the young people of Kenya may benefit through jobs creation, and more specifically when I talk about job creation, I'm talking about the value addition areas and processing that has been given more attention and allocated more money. The school feeding program that has been able to be given 3 billion shillings. That is a positive move, Mr. Speaker. The intentional move to add more resources to TVETs and Kenya medical training colleges so that we can accommodate more of our young people into the training. And the intentional move to add more money in value addition projects like the ultra-modern fish processing plant in Liwatoni and many other value addition ventures that has received a positive increment on money allocation. Mr. Speaker, whereas I appreciate that the young people of Kenya have been given an opportunity to get more busy with such ventures in value addition, I'm quite concerned because the current president, His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, when he was a deputy president, has pledged many times that he's going to provide milk coolers to most of our farmers in our villages, Githongori constituency being one. Mr. Speaker, his promises has never been fulfilled. And we do understand it is because maybe there was limitation on funding. So the fact that this proposal has allocated more money into buying of milk coolers in this country to a tune of 2 billion is a positive move for me. Not because the farmers did not have the coolers, but because more coolers will create more opportunities for our farmers and across the value chain to create jobs even for the young people. But Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that the chairman of the budget committee is in the house. And I would want to have some clarification why the money that was allocated for coffee cherry fund has been reduced with 1 billion shillings. This is something that I have been raising since the beginning of this year. We were promised that we are going to get 4 billion shillings for cherry fund. Later on, we were promised that our farmers, the coffee farmers, are going to be given 6 billion shillings to clear our debts. But according to the document that I have, Madam Speaker, vote number 1173 says that the Ministry of Cooperative and Development Management is going to lose 1 billion shillings recurrent fund from coffee cherry fund. Mr. Speaker, I would want a clarification on why coffee cherry fund is being reduced from whatever was allocated initially to losing 1 billion shillings. Is it that our farmers have not absorbed the money? Is it that they have realized that our farmers have had enough of cherry fund? Now they have to reduce to 1 billion, from 2 billion shillings to 1 billion? Or what is this that has informed the budget committee to reduce cherry fund to this level? Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I am a farmer. Sorry. I am a farmer. And I can tell you that not all farmers have received cherry fund as we speak. Some of the farmers requested for 80 shillings per kilo of cherry fund. They only received 20 shillings. There are some factories as we speak who requested for cherry fund and have never received this money. So when we come now and revise the budget and reduce this money in the excuse of that we are adding more coolers, Does it mean that milk farmers who are receiving coolers are more important than coffee farmers? This is a question that I would want to get answer from the relevant committee, because it is not right for us to be playing public relations with our farmers. It is not right for us to be promising our farmers something on television, but when it comes to actual figures, we play around with figures. So I will not support this until I'm clear why coffee farmers are getting a reduction. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Chair Budget, you'll note the concerns of members. You can respond to them during reply. Dr. Ochanda.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the motion on the basis of the timing, in terms of the time when it is falling in. Madam Speaker, this appropriation is coming in at a time when precedents have been created. We have basically created precedents in this country. A precedent, and number one, that a finance bill has been rejected nearly as the first time in the history of this country. Number two, we are doing this against a backdrop that members were very elated about the appropriation that we had done last, before we did the finance bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, as I look through this supplementary appropriations, my view is that if we had time, where we are not able to get the 400 billion shillings, Madam Speaker, if we had time, I believe we are able to get this money. Number one is the amount of what is appearing as vote and programs that are placed in different departments, but are getting monies differently. If we went ahead, particularly to synchronize in terms of, for example, if you look at the Department of Immigration, there are things that are talking about population services. Population services are in immigration. Then we also have issues to do with population in planning. I want to believe that if these things were merged and were looked at as one, we would have saved quite a bit of money here. The same goes to where we are having Department of Irrigation, we are having Department of Water. I think these are areas where, if we looked at thoroughly, there are areas where we can make savings. But beyond that, Madam Speaker, since all this began, the head of state has indicated scrapping of more than 40 parastatals. These parastatals are already still here in the supplementaries with allocations through the departments that they fall. So, Madam Speaker, if we looked through this, if we had time, and I think this is exactly what the Budget and Appropriation Committee needs to look at, the issue of cleaning duplications and the issue of costing and marrying together the monies that were supposed to be going to the parastatals that are being scrapped, then if we put them together, Madam Speaker, I believe we are able to get the 400 billion that we are looking for by cutting some of these areas in terms of the budgets that were necessary. The other thing is the whole issue of pilferage. If we are able to get to close all avenues of pilferage, all avenues where we are getting issues of corruption, particularly today the President has pronounced himself to the issue of procurement. I think if we closed all these avenues, Madam Speaker, I believe and I strongly believe that we are able to get the 400 billion shillings that are making us get to this arrangement where there's no money for development, Madam Speaker. Thank you very much.
Member for Manyata, Honorable John Gitonga, are you on this one? If not, I'll give to member for Sirisia. If not there, I'll give the member for Tetu. Honorable Geoffrey Mwangi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute and support this supplementary budget. Madam Speaker, we are in a very, very interesting time as a country, because for the first time, matters economy, matters governance are taking center stage in this country, something that we have not had in a long, long time. And it is good that we are relooking at our expenditure. It is good that we are relooking at how we raise funds. It is good that we are looking at how we finance the governance of this country. Madam Speaker, I would like to start by calling out a Treasury. Because, Madam Speaker, partly some of the problems that we have found ourselves in may have been the lack of thoroughness that we have exhibited in how we have prepared the different financial documents, be they budgets or be there appropriation. And Madam Speaker, it is important, without preempting debate on the individuals who have been selected to take charge of Treasury, to say that it is important that we get the best brains at Treasury. So that some of the challenges that we have gone on with the documents that have been rejected by the public and have put us in the spot as members of this House, at least we can be able to perform much, much better in future in terms of our budget and appropriations preparation. Madam Speaker, having said that, even as we try to exercise different austerity measures, even as we try to juggle with the minimal resources that we have and move them around to be able to satisfy the different needs in our country, it is important, Madam Speaker, that we continue and maybe even up the ante on the war on corruption and the war on wastage. Because, Madam Speaker, sometimes we talk about austerity, then we realize the only austerity we achieved is by cutting in, important programs or reducing funding to important programs. But the money that gets lost through wastage, the money that gets lost through corruption remains the same. And as some of the people who have said here, we not only need to look at the national government, but we also need to look further down into the county government. Because if we do not win the war on corruption, we will continue talking about austerity. We will continue talking about not raising enough resources for a long, long time, without achieving whatever, any meaning of progress. Madam Speaker, it is important that we also create a lean government, a government that is small enough to meet the needs of the people, but also big enough to execute the mandate that it has been given. I personally believe, Madam Speaker, that the government has no business being in business. And that is why when the president calls out and says that there are some parastatals who would like merged or who would like wound up, that is something that I support. In this country, Madam Speaker, we have over 350 plus parastatals. Some of them have duplicated functions. Others can barely even survive without getting the annual budgetary support that they get from Treasury. Madam Speaker, we have to say what is important. What is the work of a government? It is to provide education. It is to provide things like health services. It is to provide things like security and the rest. When the government is in the business of, milling machines, the government is in the business of, milling cotton and things like that. Those are things that can be best done, and they've done even better by the private sector. And Madam Speaker, if you look at this country, you can tell me any service that is offered by the government, especially those parastatals, which does not have a problem. When it comes to power, we have issues of reliability, we have issues of adequacy, and we have very many other issues. Where the services offered by the private sector, in a lot of instances, move so much better and are even cheaper. So it is time that we started looking at what is the core mandate of the government and ensure that only those functions are supported. But even as we work on this budget, and to support my chairman of the ICT committee, we must look into the future. We have continued putting a lot of money in the traditional brick and mortar economy, and we have forgotten to be futuristic. If you go to the United Arab Emirates, they have a minister for AI. They are thinking about futuristic things of where the world is going. We still have, and rightly so, an obsession with roads, an obsession with water, and those are all good things. But as we fix the past, we must also continue talking about the future. How much money are we allocating in research? How much money are we allocating in AI? How are we helping to build a futuristic government even as we take care of the past? So, Madam Speaker, I rise to support the supplementary budget, but I request that the chairman of the budget committee and his people at Treasury